Welcome to Scofield Farm. I am Carice. We are in Northern California, Zone 9, and I want to show you how I support my tomatoes. My normal method of supporting tomatoes is to use a cattle panel fence, and I actually have them secured by T-posts and zip ties, and I actually grow tomatoes on both sides. I know some people only do one side. I do them kind of a checkerboard pattern, and I tie them with garden tape. I like to prune the bottoms of them for good airflow, especially since I plant so close. You can see there's already some tomatoes coming. Oh, I am so excited. Now, what I do for pruning my tomatoes is I look for suckers that are right here in the elbow of the plant, and I pinch them. If it is an indeterminate tomato, San Marzano is indeterminate, so I will pinch it. Indeterminate means that it will produce tomatoes the whole season long. Determinate means there is a determined amount of tomatoes it will produce. So I try to not pinch back my determinants, although I do like to prune the bottoms of them up to the bottom of the panel for airflow since I plant close. Now by close, I mean I plant about 1.5 feet apart on either side of the panel. So you can see this one to this one is about 18 to 20 inches. I think it's 20 inches. And then right in between them on the other side, I have another tomato in a checkerboard fashion that is about 1 foot away, but that 10-inch mark in between the two. And then it is also 20 inches from the next closest tomato to it. We live in a very hot, dry climate. We do not get rain in the summer. We do not have humidity. Disease and fungus aren't our biggest problems with production. The heat is our biggest problem. Aphids, the types of pests that like dry climates, spider mites, nosedum, I think they're called, another type of pest. Anything that likes really dry climates, that is our problem. Blossoms dropping when it's in triple digits for long extended periods of time. But disease is not as big of a deal. If I live somewhere that rained all summer, that was humid, I might not put tomatoes on both sides of the panels. But for us, and I prune really well, it works well. I always like to see little tomatoes starting to form. Now this year I decided to rest one of my usual tomato beds. So I had to grow less tomatoes than usual. I also had a very bad productive year last year for tomatoes. About 95% of gardeners I talked to in our area had the same problem. I believe it was weather related. So I had to cut back on the number of tomatoes, but I had so many starts that did well, I was left with some after selling to other local gardeners, and I didn't want to toss them. I'd given away to everyone I could think of. So this is what I did just for those tomatoes. I found larger pots. See this one? And I bought tomato cages to support just the tomatoes in pots that are not next to a cattle panel. My son got these hexagonal pots from a friend who moved. We also have used a tomato cage for a tomato in each of these pots. Those are kind of his babies. And look at these. There's quite a few on there. This variety, I believe, is Taxi, which is a determinate. Now you'll see I did prune the lower branch, but I will not prune suckers because we want as many as this plant has predetermined to grow. So you'll see several of these cages throughout my garden on garden tours because they are in the pots. And tomatoes that are not supported will actually grow horizontal on the ground because they want to drop their seeds to keep their plant growing back every year. This is why as gardeners we grow our tomatoes vertically, because we don't want pests or dirt or different diseases to get them laying on the ground. We also want them to keep producing, because once a plant feels like it's dropped enough seeds to keep itself alive and coming back next year, it will actually slow production. So we grow everything vertically with tomatoes so they keep producing. They produce as many pest-free, disease-free, clean fruit as we can get from them. You will see my beds interplanted, and I like to plant our tomatoes down the middle of beds that are finishing up their cool weather crops. Right here you will see some garlic. You will see cauliflower that has not formed a head yet. I'm not sure how long I'm going to give this guy. You will see chives, perennials, herbs like chives. You'll see sage. I even have some celery down beneath the tomatoes, and that is an experiment this year. I don't know how they will do, but I like to interplant, intercrop, some people call it. I like to maximize space. We are year-round gardeners in Zone 9B, growing something all year round, though it varies what grows well in what season. Now, when you have perennials like sage in your garden bed, you're going to have this problem. Sage can be highly invasive. So see how I have this tomato plant and that tomato plant, and even the one down there that are crowded by the sage. I'm going to have to come do a deep pruning on the sage to give the tomatoes room. And also, as I said, we want airflow at the base of the tomatoes. We don't want something causing too much moisture or possible disease. I am very excited for tomatoes this year. Already this taxi plant, though it be small, it is mighty in producing some tomatoes for me, and it looks like a better year already. I also like to mulch underneath my tomatoes with wood chips. This bed has not been freshly mulched yet. This bed is more like what I need to finish on my tomatoes, to have a nice layer of smaller wood chips to hold in moisture in our extremely dry, hot climate. I am very influenced by square foot gardening and vertical gardening and back to Eden gardening, because I grew in a very small space for years. When I first started gardening, I had a little area of my sister-in-law's backyard. We did it in ground. Since then, I moved to 2 small 4x4 raised beds in a very small space in our yard in an old house that was the only place that got a little bit of sunlight, not even quite 6 hours a day, which is considered full sun for tomatoes. Now I have a lot more room, a lot more sunlight, but I still like to maximize space and grow everything up. Grow things as close as I can without hurting the plants. I also amend my soil more frequent than most people. I amend it both fall and spring, since we don't rest our beds over the winter. We actually have some cool weather crops growing in them. Thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions on growing tomatoes vertically, on growing tomatoes in hot, dry climates, or on growing tomatoes in containers and raised beds, how about you pop your comments and questions down in the comments below? I would love to hear from you. Thanks for joining me. Have a wonderful day. Happy planting and take care.